Tonight, let's talk about Woodrow Wilson, 28th President of the United States, one of the most fascinating enigmas ever to hold public office in the United States. He was the president of Princeton University and a distinguished academic career. And from Princeton, at Princeton, he threw out and reformed a lot of the rules that had governed the campus and really brought it into the modern era. And that so impressed people that he ran for governor of New Jersey and promised to get rid of the machines that dominated the state, still do. And he was very effective. He got elected, and was positioned really as the opponent of the political machines. Then he ran for president just 2 years later after he was elected governor of Jersey in 1912, which was one of the most interesting elections in history. It came after a 20-year buildup of pressure for progressive action, for liberal action, starting with the farmers and the populists back in the Bryan era, accelerating through Theodore Roosevelt's presidency, frustrated by Grant's presidency, and it exploded in 1912. And you had a four-way race. Theodore Roosevelt ran for a third term, but he was denied the Republican nomination by Taft, even though he won all the primaries. And there was a big ruckus at the convention when they nominated Taft instead of Roosevelt. And Roosevelt finished second, actually. The Republican Party finished third. Roosevelt's party was the Bull Moose Party. But what's interesting about it is you had Wilson, who got 6 million votes, Roosevelt, who got 4 million, and Eugene Victor Debs, the socialist candidate, got 1 million. So 11 million of the votes out of 15 million cast were for liberal candidates, only 4 million for the Republican William Howard Taft. So it was an overwhelming mandate for progressive change. And boy, did Wilson give it to him. The most ambitious program other than the New Deal in our history. He set up the Federal Reserve Board, which now doesn't seem progressive, but back then it was the way to take the banking industry away from the control of J.P. Morgan, invested in what they thought was a public control. The Federal Trade Commission, which was the first attempt to regulate commerce from the federal government, other than the Interstate Commerce Commission that was largely aimed at railroads. The Clayton Antitrust Act, which was the strongest of the antitrust acts. We still use it as the basis for antitrust law. Child labor prohibition, 8-hour work week, women's suffrage, prohibition, the income tax, which passed in Wilson's second term. And the income tax was originally adopted because prohibition was drying up, forgive the pun, the whiskey tax revenues, which supported the federal government. 2/3 of the revenue came from the whiskey tax, 1/3 from tariffs. And that was eliminating it. You had to replace it, so they passed the income tax. And direct election of senators, taking it away from the boss-controlled, corrupt state legislatures and putting it directly in the people. So Roosevelt, that was Wilson's first term, and a few years into his second. We'll talk about his second term next week, which was a lot less delightful a story. Thanks a lot.